Hi guys, it's Stephanie. I just wanted to come on here and say hello a couple of days before Lunar New Year. We are transitioning from the year of the dragon into the year of the snake, and so I just wanted to introduce a book that's important during this time and also do a little reading. That book is the I-Ching. This is a translation by Alfred Huang, and if you're wondering what the I-Ching is, it's an important book for Chinese divination practice and has been important throughout Chinese history. And when we talk about Chinese history, we're talking about 5,000 years of it, to the extent that it was banned, okay? That's how controversial this book was. And it's also known as the Book of Change. So it was originally published in the late 9th century BCE. It was used throughout the Western Zhou period from 1000 to 750 BCE, the Warring States and early imperial periods from 500 to 200 BCE, and in the late 2nd century BCE, it became part of the Chinese Five Classics, which includes the classic of poetry, which has folk songs, court ceremony songs, hymns and eulogies for heroes and ancestral spirits of the royal house, the Book of Documents, which is the oldest Chinese narrative, the Book of Rites, with ancient rites, social forms, and court ceremonies, our I-Ching, and the Spring and Autumn Annals from the state of Lu, which is a historical record that was written actually by Confucius. So now, after the communists took over China in 1949, way later, the I-Ching was denounced as a book of feudalism and superstition. It was banned from the market and from being read. The Taoist master Alfred Huang, who did the English translation of this version of the I-Ching, was imprisoned in China for 9 years for his counter-revolutionary activities during the Cultural Revolution, which was mainly meeting up with scholars to discuss this book. And eventually, after being sentenced to death, lived for 22 years in confinement only because he was too beloved by Chinese people to ultimately be executed. He eventually was released, and then he emigrated to America and devoted his life to creating a new English version of the I-Ching that carries its original Chinese essence. And according to him, that was kind of the issue with some of the previous versions of the I-Ching that he had read in English, is that they carried more of an English essence, and he wanted a version of it that felt very Chinese, even if it was being interpreted in English. If you know nothing else about the I-Ching, know that it's a book of ancient wisdom. It's a book that not only tells you about the present situation and future potential that you as an individual or a situation might have, but also gives instructions on what to do to obtain good fortune and avoid misfortune. And it gives you freedom to choose. I think this is what's so powerful about it, is that it gives you the freedom to choose how you want to proceed. So it can be a very intuitive process as well. It's largely based on the principle of cause and effect, what some people would call karma. And everything is in a process of continuous change, rising and falling in a progressive evolutionary advancement. When situations proceed beyond their extremes, they alternate to their opposites. It is a reminder to accept necessary change and be ready to transform. One should adjust one's efforts according to changes in time and situation. In a favorable time and situation, never neglect the unfavorable potential. In an unfavorable time and situation, never act abruptly and blindly. And in adverse circumstances, never become depressed and despair. Now that's easier said than done, but this is a kind of encouragement to bide your time or be hopeful about the positive that is surely to come. So I did a reading a few days ago because I wanted to think about what I personally or we collectively should be thinking about at this time. And interestingly, the gua that I pulled is this. The character is bull, which means falling away or shedding. Now, what an interesting pull, no? Because we're entering the year of the snake. So have you ever seen a snake shed its skin? It's a really fascinating and beautiful process to witness, but it's also an act that requires bravery from the snake. So first of all, why does a snake shed its skin? It does so because as its body grows and changes, its old skin begins to feel tight and limits its movements. So the snake needs to produce an oily fluid to remove its old skin. Shedding skin also removes parasites and injuries from the snake. So this transformative act is a really interesting one, done by the snake rubbing its face against a tree or rough surface, that then the snake will create a tear after doing that from the friction near its mouth or nose. And from there, the snake can slither out of its old skin, and its new skin that it created underneath that dead epidermis is revealed, which is much shinier and more comfortable. Here we're reminded by nature that evolving is instinctive to us, but also requires us to listen to our bodies, to have this knowing of when it's time to grow and expand our capacities and our range of motion, and when it's not. Just like the snake's body slithers, we can flow and move with this change. On an individual level, this gua encourages us to explore our subconscious and the dark places, the dusty places within ourselves, and shine a light there. We can bring the subconscious into the conscious with ourselves or within community if we feel safe doing so. Let's assume this is a safe community. We need to self-reflect on what we no longer need and what also isn't serving the greater good of humanity. Many of us are scared of snakes, right? Because they represent mystery, magic, poison, venom, darkness, a quiet but powerful energy, and also feminine mystique. So I want to especially encourage women here to lean into their feminine magic, but also men, that you are open to female wisdom. Together, we are here to care for each other. All men, all women, all genders. But whether we're talking about individual or group level, micro or macro level, from our local communities to our entire globe, we're being asked to do this inner inquiry of what's no longer working for us. Some social order or socioeconomic system that is limiting our movements and natural evolution cycle as a human species. We've got to shed some old skin and remember that this can actually be a sensual experience for us, because it is so yummy, even in the deepest despair and grief and hardship and sorrow, to be human. Let's remember the miracle of the human body and of nature to regenerate. Let us love on our own nature and greater nature a whole lot more. So with that, I wish you happy year of the snake, and I wish all of you the very best. Take care of yourselves.